Building a classroom community might just be the most important thing you do this school year. The great thing about it is that you can start on the first day and you can continue building that community throughout the year. Back to school time can be filled with so many lessons and activities, as well as assessments and celebrations and getting to know yous. It's a time that can be stressful for both students and teachers. Some students might be dealing with separation anxiety or just missing their summer schedule. Many might be sad that summer's over and they don't really want to go back to school because they enjoyed their time with family and friends over the summer. And some students might be feeling overwhelmed because of all the newness. Maybe they're in a new school, they have a new teacher, they have new classmates, and that can bring on a lot of anxiety. Some teachers might be concerned with what their classroom's going to be like and what kind of students are they going to have this year and how are they going to interact with each other. And like students, teachers might be sad that summer's over and they're missing their family and their downtime. No matter which side you're on, whether you're super stoked for the new school year or you're just feeling a little apprehensive, it is important to make sure you're building that classroom community from the very first day. Since students and teachers are all entering the space with different feelings and different needs, it's important to make sure you're building a classroom that is consistent, comfortable, and inviting to students. So here are some activities to help you get started with building that classroom community at the beginning of the year and continue to build those relationships every single day. The first way that I would build classroom community is to get to know my students. Get to know them, they can get to know each other, and they can get to know you. And getting to know each other and what excites you is going to help everything run more smoothly in your classroom. You can tailor your activities and lessons to things that the students are interested in. So make sure that you are spending some time at the beginning of the year getting to know your students. Ask them about their pets, their families, their friends, what they enjoy doing. Do they play sports? Do they like ice cream? Which flavor? Anything to get to know them better. So one of the first activities that I would do with them is this ice cream what's the scoop activity. And it's more of a whole group activity. Actually have them record their answers on a recording sheet as well, and they turn those in at the end. And that can give me a good head start on what their interests are and what I need to know about them before the school year even gets started. As you are getting to know them, you might want to start some sort of Google sheet or something with each of the students' names. And as you learn new things about them, you could keep track of them in the sheet. That way you can come back to them and show students that you not only remember things about them, but you can use those interests to tailor your lessons to your class. And as the school year goes on, you continue to add to that document and you get to know students more and more. And then that gives them a feeling that you care about them so that they feel comfortable and accepted within your classroom. Learn as much as you can about them. As the year progresses, another way to really get to know your students is through the use of journaling. Have students responding to different prompts or different questions in their journals, and then you can read them and kind of get to know a lot more about them. They're more willing to write about stuff in their lives than they are to raise their hand and share it with the entire class. So one of the things I created are holiday of the day writing prompts. Not only are these fun and interesting holidays that are talked about each and every single day of the year, they are teaching students about that holiday, but then also asking them questions that are prompting them to write a little bit about themselves or how they feel about something. These would be great to utilize throughout the year to really get to know different things about your students based on the writing prompt. And they're editable too, so you can change them. Another favorite activity for really getting to know not just my students, me getting to know my students, but also my students kind of getting to know themselves a little bit. I always did this character trait activity at the beginning of the year. Character traits is just one of those things that it's good vocabulary and good to go over that at the beginning of the year. So one thing I would do is I would print out this character trait freebie that I have, and I will link that below. And then they have this list of all these character traits. What we do is we talk about the character traits and we use highlighters to determine which character traits are more positive and which character traits are more negative. So we color code them and we decide whether they're a positive thing, say you're being generous, or whether they're a negative thing, like you're being greedy. So the students would pick out 3 character traits that they thought represented themselves in a positive way. And then I would have them write them on sentence strips and we would cut them out. And it was really a great representation of everything we are in the classroom. I got to know how they see themselves by which character traits they chose, but I also loved having it as a beginning of the year display on my door. And it just said we are, and it just had all these positive character traits that the students thought of themselves. And it's just a great beginning of the year activity, and it actually has a little content in it, so it's perfect for those first few weeks. The next thing that I make sure that we do in those first few days, weeks, is we go over expectations and procedures. Setting expectations is crucial because your students need to know what you expect of them in certain situations. If they don't know what you expect of them, then they are going to do stuff the way that they have done it before or the way they feel like it. If you go over those expectations at the beginning of the year, it makes it a lot easier for students to know what to do in those different situations. And setting those expectations is one thing, but following through is another thing. You need to make sure that you're following through. If they're not doing what you expect of them, you need to make sure that you let them know. If they are doing what you expect of them, you need to make sure to let them know. You are constantly building that trust factor with your students. You are not going to stop expecting it from them. I have this free classroom procedures and expectations checklist. You can grab it over on my blog. I will link it below. It's a huge compilation of expectations and procedures that you may want to teach your students. So as I am going over these different expectations and procedures at the beginning of the year, I'm checking them off so I know that I went over them with my students. And the checklist totally helps with this, and there's different spaces that you can add your own expectations if I'm missing something. But it's a good start to get you going, because if you're not truly going to expect students to do something a certain way, then don't go over it as an expectation, because you need to consistently and constantly remind them until that expectation is solid. Expectations should be clear and concise, and you need to let them know when they are meeting them and when they are not. I have a whole blog post with fun games you can play with students where you are practicing your expectations and procedures with them in a fun way, and they get to learn them so that you are not having to repeat yourself as much, because if you put it in a fun game, then they remember it a lot better. Now, like I said, the classroom procedures are also important. Not only are you expecting them to do something a certain way, the procedure for each thing can be different from year to year, depending on who their teacher is. So your procedure for handing in late work may be different from last year's teacher. Your procedure for sharpening pencils may be different from last year's teacher. They're gonna be different from classroom to classroom, teacher to teacher. So you have to spend time going over those procedures. They help build that classroom community, and they help your students know what procedures that they need to follow, and also what you're expecting of them when they're following them. Classroom procedures help them interact safely and with confidence in the classroom. I'm gonna link all my classroom procedure posts in the description below so you can check them all out. I have tons of ideas for going over classroom procedures with your students, and also a lot of fun games where you can play with your students and review those classroom procedures. So one game I like to play after I feel as though my students have learned their classroom expectations and procedures is a classroom procedures game show. It's editable, so I can change out the different procedures and expectations that I want to review with my students, and I can put them in there. Then I put my students into groups of 3 to 4 students, and they each get a whiteboard and a marker so that they're all answering the questions, and we play a game show. It's kind of like Jeopardy, where they're answering questions and getting points. A group will pick the question. Maybe they want to pick group work for 300, and then they go to that question, and everybody is writing on their whiteboards what they think the answer of the question, or what is the procedure for that, what is the expectation for this. So they're writing what they think it is based on what you had already gone over previously. Then once they all have an answer, I have them get into groups and they discuss their answers with each other, and they see if maybe they can be persuaded, or maybe they can persuade someone else to agree with their answer more than their own. And then they have to come up with a final answer for their group. So once they have this final answer for the group, and we really go over the expectations of how to disagree with each other respectfully and how to convince others your answer may be the best choice. So we do talk about that as we're going through this game, especially if we're playing it for the first time. And then the students come to a final answer on their whiteboard. Then we show them, and anybody that gets the answer correct, they get the points, and then we move on to the next question. And I just have them take turns choosing which question that they want to go over next. And this is a fun way to solidify all of that stuff you've been talking about since the beginning of the year, and in a fun way, and really get to see if your students know what the procedures are for different things that you've been going over. So I like to do it with games and activities instead of just standing up there, well, this is how you sharpen your pencil, and this is how you put your work away, and this is how you sign up for the bathroom. Yeah, you got to go over those things once, but then we review them in games and activities, and that way that they're more memorable and they retain them better, and it helps your classroom run more smoothly and helps build that classroom community where your students know what to expect and they know the procedures for things, and so does everyone else in the classroom, and everyone can work together to make your classroom community a positive and inclusive place to be. Those are just some of the ways that I try to start out the beginning of the year, building my classroom community and really making sure that my students feel safe, comfortable, and included within the walls of our classroom. I want everyone to feel like a family, and I want to continue to build these relationships and build that community throughout the year so that we are working together to make everyone better and to learn and grow.